Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're tackling something absolutely huge, and it's how to avoid the biggest trap in AI prototyping, which is the illusion of progress. Look, if you've ever watched a massive tech rollout just spin its wheels for months, or maybe you're the one trying to prove that a shiny new tech like agentic AI actually works in the real world, well, this is exactly for you. We're going to unpack the exact framework that top-tier engineers use to cut right through all the corporate noise and deliver undeniable, rock-solid evidence. So let's start with a real-world scenario to set the stage. Picture a massive wireless carrier. We'll call them Polaris Mobile. They wanted an end-to-end generative AI platform covering all their customer care channels. Pretty standard ask, right? Well, a consulting firm comes in and hands them a massive 78-page architecture proposal to build the whole thing over 24 weeks. It was super detailed, laying out these big phased rollouts for routing, voice, IVR, analytics, the whole 9 yards. And honestly, on paper, it looked incredibly thorough. But then, a forward-deployed engineer takes one look at this massive deck and delivers just a brutal reality check. They essentially said, this proposal will run for 24 weeks and produce zero evidence that this AI actually works. The engineer saw right through it. The entire 6-month plan was just designing a massive routing layer that connected to absolutely nothing real. It relied entirely on fake, stubbed connectors for the back end. And here's the truth. You can build the most elegant platform in the universe, but if you don't have evidence that it solves a real problem, you've literally just wasted half a year. So here is our game plan for dismantling this illusion today. First, we'll look at the Polaris RFP trap. Then, we'll compare the narrow path versus the horizontal slice. After that, why evidence beats plumbing. Fourth, redrawing the architecture blueprint. And finally, we'll cover 3 common prototyping pitfalls you absolutely need to avoid. All right, let's jump straight into part 1, the Polaris RFP trap. Let's look at the sheer scale of the illusion here. Think about a typical telecom contact center. Any AI proposal here basically operates on 3 main axes. First, you've got the channels, right? Chat, voice, the mobile app. Second, the intents. This is what the user actually wants to do. Checking a bill, reporting an outage, things like that. And third, the backends. These are the actual systems of record, like the CRM or the billing system. Now, if you multiply these out, let's say 4 channels times 8 intents times 5 backends, boom. Polaris was implicitly asking for 160 distinct workflows, and that is exactly why those consultants proposed a massive horizontal slice. They were trying to boil the ocean all at once. Which brings us nicely to part 2, narrow path versus horizontal slice, and why picking the right shape changes everything. So, what actually is a narrow path? By definition, a narrow path is the absolute smallest end-to-end slice that crosses all 3 of those axes we just talked about. You pick exactly 1 channel, 1 single intent, and 1 backend. It's derived from the agile concept of a walking skeleton, and it's brilliant because it forces you to prove the system works completely before you even think about expanding it. It has to be fully instrumented from the exact second the user types a query, all the way to the precise moment the system of record updates. Now, here is the core of the issue. Both of these shapes technically ship code, but the outcomes are night and day. A horizontal slice, that only gives you plumbing. If you build out routing across all your channels but just fake the back-end connection, congratulations, you've built a polished demo and a really nice slide deck for leadership. But a narrow path cuts through every single layer for just 1 workflow, and that yields undeniable evidence. We're talking real evaluation results, real user adoption metrics, and concrete artifacts that your security team can actually review and approve. Let's move into part 3, why evidence beats plumbing. Honestly, the numbers here really speak for themselves. When you stop building fake plumbing and start building real end-to-end paths, the metrics get pretty wild. Take Mobilely, for example. They deployed a virtual agent and watched their first response time plummet from 20 minutes down to literally 6 seconds. That's a massive shift. Or look at Cox Communications. They used an agent assist model and actually drove a 20 to 30% increase in revenue per chat. You only uncover massive wins like this if you have real users interacting on an end-to-end path. You just can't measure adoption or revenue on a fake connector. All right, part 4, redrawing the architecture blueprint. Let's talk about how to actually shrink that massive scope down. So how on earth do we shrink 160 workflows into a single proof of concept? The secret is you have to be absolutely ruthless. You select each piece based strictly on its capacity to yield clear evidence, not its strategic importance and not its potential revenue. Step 1, pick the highest yield channel. Step 2, pick an intent that gives you a very measurable right or wrong answer. Step 3, pick the one true backend system for that intent. And step 4, which is crucial, you ruthlessly timebox the entire build to just 4 weeks. Let's apply this directly to rescue Polaris. For the channel, we're going with chat. Why? Because evaluating text logs is super easy and we get to completely bypass mobile app release delays. For the intent, we choose billing inquiry. It's high volume, about 28% of their traffic, and it has extremely clean correctness criteria. The AI's balance either perfectly matches the system or it doesn't. Simple. Finally, the backend is the BSS, because that's the absolute sole system of record for billing. Just like that, we've carved out an end-to-end path that we can actually prove in 4 weeks. Now, you might be wondering, how do you sell this tiny scope to stakeholders who demanded a massive platform? You use what's called a tactical concession. You explicitly name a second path, something like voice for roaming activation, and you say, hey, this is queued up for weeks 6 through 10. This reassures leadership that yes, the whole grand platform is indeed coming, but it firmly establishes the rule that expansion is entirely contingent on proving the evidence first in week 4. Let's hit part 5. 3 common prototyping pitfalls. As you start drawing your own paths, beware of these imposters. Pitfall number 1 is simply taking the easiest path. Say your team already has some code lying around for a social media DM integration, so you figure, let's just start there for some quick internal momentum. Huge mistake. Easy is not decisive. If you build it just because you can, you're building a vanity demo. You aren't building an evidence-producing test that actually challenges your real business constraints. The second pitfall is demo polish. We've all seen this one. It's when a team obsesses over building a flawless, beautiful chat interface, but they fake the backend connection. They convince themselves they're on a narrow path. But guys, without a human-free connection to a true system of record, it proves absolutely nothing. The second a security architect looks at your gorgeous UI, they will fail it, because there is zero real data flow to evaluate. And pitfall number 3 is parallel paths. This is that creeping temptation to hedge your bets by building 2 narrow paths at once, maybe one for billing and one for roaming. But doing this instantly doubles your surface area, which halves your depth of evidence. By week 4, instead of one undeniable, rock-solid proof of concept, you're just left with 2 half-baked demos. Pick one path, finish it, and prove it. All right, to wrap up this explainer, let's just take a step back and reflect for a second. The discipline of staying on the narrow path is incredibly cheap to apply on day 1, but let me tell you, it is absolutely agonizing to try and retrofit at week 10 when you suddenly realize your massive, expensive project is completely untested. So take a really hard look at the project you are building or managing right now. Are you building a horizontal slice that's just destined to become another slide deck? Or are you carving out a narrow path that will deliver undeniable real-world evidence? Stop building plumbing and start demanding evidence. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.